Alright, let's talk about Izzy versus Imavov, which is happening this Saturday. And you know what's wild about this fight? This is Israel Adesanya's first fight in 3 years that isn't for the UFC middleweight championship. And get this, it's also the first time in years that Izzy hasn't been on a pay-per-view card. Like, you have to go all the way back to 2018 for that, which is insane when you think about it. And to make things even tougher for him, Izzy's coming into this fight on a 2-fight losing streak. And now he's going up against Nasruddin Imavov, who's been on a tear in the middleweight division lately. Imavov is riding a 3-fight win streak and has all the momentum in the world right now, having big wins over fighters like Brandon Allen and Jared Cannonier. So this is going to be a big test for Izzy. And honestly, it feels like it's a proven moment for both guys. And look, it's not like Izzy is declining either. If anything, you can argue that his last performance against Dricus was phenomenal. Israel was extremely aggressive in that fight. His boxing was in full display, sharp, calculated, and relentless. It's just that Dricus seems to have this weird plot armor or something, you know? Like, no matter how good Izzy looked, Dricus just always finds a way. So honestly, you could say what we saw last time was the best version of Izzy in that fight. With all that being said, I'm kind of torn because I think it's going to be close when it comes to the striking in this fight. I think Izzy is better on the feet in general. He uses his range better than almost anyone in the sport. Those teep kicks, the low calf kicks, the body work, it's all about keeping his opponent at, the perfect distance. He doesn't just throw strikes for the sake of it either. Every kick he lands is part of a setup for something else. He's playing chess while most guys are playing checkers in the striking game, unless your name's Sean Strickland. On top of that, Izzy's timing is insane. He's not just trying to land, he's baiting guys into overextending so he can counter with something nasty. Look at the way he finished Robert Whittaker in their first fight, or even how he knocked out Alex Pereira. He creates openings with his calf kicks, traps his opponents, and capitalizes with precision. That's what makes him an elite kickboxer. But here's where Imavov comes in. While Izzy might be the better kickboxer, Imavov is arguably the better pure boxer. Imavov thrives in close range exchanges. His inside boxing is really sharp, like really sharp. He doesn't need a ton of space to work with. And what makes him so dangerous is when he gets past the kicks. He has these snappy short punches that pack a ton of power, especially when he's pressuring forward. And the thing with Imavov is he's not just headhunting, he's mixing things up to the body, to uppercuts, to hooks. He's really good at piecing his combinations together once he gets in range. You saw this when he fought Sean Strickland. And as we all know, Sean's a great boxer. And he's kind of like a puzzle you've got to figure out, like a Rubik's Cube. Sean was winning most of the rounds with his pressure and volume, but then you get to the later part of that fight. And Imavov started showing some urgency. He knew that he was down on the scorecards, and you could see him really going for it. In the 5th round, Imavov was piecing up Sean on the feet, landing some of these clean shots. He started to figure Sean out, timing that predictable forward movement, and landing some sharp counters. It got to the point where Sean had to clinch up just to slow things down, which you don't really see him do often. Of course, by this point of the fight, it was already too late for Imavov to turn things around, but it was still impressive to see that second win from him. And look, I know that Sean took this fight on short notice, and maybe that played a role on him slowing down, but Imavov's adjustments in that final round really stood out. It showed that he can hang in there with someone as tough and experienced as Strickland. Another thing that impressed me is Imavov's chin, okay? It's something else. It's one of his most underrated attributes. The guy is ridiculously durable, and you can see it in some of the fights he's been in where he's been eating big shots and just keep moving forward like nothing happened. Take the fight against Joaquin Buckley for an example. Buckley's known for his power, the dude was able to throw bombs, but even with Buckley landing clean, Imavov just ate those shots and just kept working his game plan. There wasn't a single moment in that fight where he looked rocked or even phased. And then there's the fight with Jared Cannonier. Jared is one of the most harder hitters in the division, and he lands some serious power shots on Imavov. But Imavov just stayed composed, ate the shots, and kept moving forward like they didn't even register. Jared's the kind of guy who can put almost anyone out if he connects clean. But Imavov's chin held up every time. He's never looked wobbled or even close to being in trouble. Honestly, the fact that Imavov has never been rocked or even looked close to being finished says a lot about his durability. He's one of those chins where you know he's always going to be in the fight. even against the big power punchers in the division. Even with all that being considered, I still think Izzy would outstrike Imavov in a straight kickboxing match. It wouldn't be competitive, but despite Imavov's durability, I just don't see him outstriking Izzy for all 5 rounds. Another thing that does get me nervous about Imavov is his gas tank. Imavov's cardio is a bit of a question mark. It's not bad, but it's not elite either. You see, earlier in his fights, he looks sharp, his movement is on point, his volume is solid, and he can control the pace really well. But as the fight goes on, especially in those high pressure grinded out matchups, you start to see him slow down. Take his fight with Joaquin Buckley. Imavov looked great in the first couple of rounds. He was dictating the pace, landing clean combinations, and really putting it on Buckley. But by the end of the 3rd round, Buckley turned up the heat, and you can see Imavov starting to fade. He hung in there and got the win, but you can tell that the gas tank was running on fumes by the end of the fight. Then you look at his fight with Sean Strickland. Now, we all know Sean, he's a cardio machine who never stops coming forward, so that's a tough style to deal with. But Imavov started strong. However, by the end of the 4th and 5th round, he was visibly gassed. He had his moments, especially in the 5th, where he landed some good shots, but his output and his movements weren't the same as earlier in the fight. Now, if you're Israel Adesanya, that's something you absolutely key in on. You see, Izzy is one of the best in the game at managing his energy and picking his spots. He's patient early, reading his opponents, and then turns it up when they start to fade. Against Imavov, Izzy would likely take his time, make him work harder than he wants to, and target the body with teeps, low kicks, and jabs to drain that gas tank even faster. By the later rounds, Imavov's cardio issue would really show, and that's where Izzy thrives, those championship rounds, where he can pick you apart. However, Imavov is super well rounded, and this is where his grappling can come into play and could help him win. His grappling is legit, not elite like a pure grappler, but definitely a solid and criminally underrated. He's the type of fighter who blends his grappling seamlessly with his striking. He's not out there shooting explosive double legs, but he's got a sneaky trip and a solid clinch work, especially when he gets his opponents backed up against the cage. And once he's on top, he's great at controlling positions and landing some damage. Just look at his fight with Edmund Shabazian. He absolutely mauled him on the ground. And defensively, he can handle himself. Against Brendan Allen, who's a legit submission guy, Imavov reversed positions, stayed calm, and made Allen look like the less dangerous grappler in that fight. So yeah, his grappling might not be the flashiest, but it's effective, especially when he dictates the pace. Now, if we're going to talk about how his grappling could impact the fight with Izzy, it's huge. We all know what Izzy thrives when he's able to control the range, picks his shots, and stay in his striking flow. But if Imavov can mix in the takedowns and clinch work, that can completely throw Izzy off his game. Think about it. If Imavov is consistently making him defend takedowns or fight in the clinch, Izzy can't just focus on the striking. It forces him to split his attention, and that's where mistakes happens. But the one thing that does concern me is his cardio. Like I said earlier, if he slows down in the later rounds, Izzy is going to absolutely going to capitalize on that. Izzy's the kind of guy who will start chopping at the legs, controlling the fight from the outside, and start picking him apart if Imavov fades. That being said, Imavov has good output in the early rounds. If he could take Izzy down, especially in the center of the cage, it could change the fight. The thing about Izzy is that he's pretty good near the fence. If you take him down near the cage, he's probably going to get back to his feet. But in the center of the octagon, that's where Imavov can lock him down, control position, and land some ground and pound. The point here is that Imavov has to grapple. If he doesn't mix it up and makes Izzy worry about the takedown, he's going to lose. Simple as that. On the flip side, if Izzy can shut down all the grappling exchanges and keep the fight at range, he could dominate. Izzy's striking is too clean when he gets into his rhythm. But even if the grappling doesn't work for Imavov, I think the boxing could still give Izzy some serious problems. You see, Imavov's ability to close the distance and cut angles is one of his biggest strengths. He's so calculated in how he closes the gap. He doesn't just rush in like a Kelvin Gastelum. Instead, he uses feints, a sharp jab, and footwork to create openings. Once he gets into range, he's not afraid to step into the pocket and let his hands go. That kind of approach can really throw Izzy off his game, especially if he can time those entries well. Now, I know what people are going to say, well, Izzy's boxing looked good against Dricus du Plessis. And yeah, it did. But let's be real, Dricus is not known for being a great boxer. He's a brawler if anything, and he makes things messy. Imavov is way more technical and calculated in how he strikes. So while Izzy's grappling might have looked sharp, in that fight this is a completely different stylistic challenge. At the end of the day, Imavov needs to bring everything to the table. If he can blend his striking and grappling, stay active in the early rounds, and avoid gassing, he could make this a very competitive fight. But if he can't get the takedowns and Izzy keeps that fight at range, it's going to be a long night for him. Either way, this fight can get interesting because Imavov has the tools to disturb Izzy. It's just a matter of how he uses them. That's why for my official prediction for this fight, I'm actually going to switch from my original pick from picking Izzy and go with Imavov in a really close split decision. Obviously, it can go the other way, but man, I feel like I've been playing it too safe. I just can't wait for this fight. But what do you guys think? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always guys, I'll see you guys in my next one.